Communication is the fundamental building block of society. It evolved from hand gestures and crude pictures to words and languages. It's how we interact with each other when we can't read each other's minds, right? We speak, we write, we share ideas, we write music, we make plans, we build things together. So communication is absolutely vital for us to have a society that functions, for us to have a body that works together. I think of like this caveman and this cavewoman who want to share a cave and there is no language existing yet. So they both have to point at the fire and go, ooh, and they know ooh means fire. And then they go, ooh, ah, and that means tree or whatever, right? They agreed on. And because they pointed and they made a sound and they agreed on what that sound means, suddenly they know how to connect about it. They don't have to be near a fire or tree to communicate about a fire or a tree because they made a sound to associate with it, right? That's what words are. It's our way to communicate. So here's the problem. Words without a universally understood definition as a starting point, at least, we don't have to agree on all the elaborate details. The definition doesn't have to be a million miles long, but words without a universally understood definition don't mean anything. Also, words that can mean absolutely anything you want them to mean also mean nothing. And that is kind of what we do in society. With the caveman, until they pointed and grunted, they didn't know that the other person knew. But in society, if I'm speaking English and you're listening to English, we just kind of assume that we all share the same definition of book. Well, you went to school and I went to school, so I assume we mean the same thing. And language starts to erode. That assumption does a lot of damage. Okay? If I say gobbledygook, it doesn't mean anything because we haven't assigned a definition to that combination of sounds. But the word cat, we have all decided means that little four-legged feline that 50% of people seem to be allergic to. We've assigned a meaning to that. We have not assigned a meaning to gobbledygook. Therefore, it means nothing to you. It sounds like gibberish, right? So for us to communicate, for us to build society, we have to be able to talk. We have to use words that we share an understanding about. The reason I'm making such a big point to say that is people tend to bypass definitions of words and having those conversations, but it is pivotal for unity in a body for us to be speaking the same language, right? So what is the most important word in the Bible to define correctly and share a universal understanding of? Love. And I'm going to prove it. I need some people to look up some verses for me. I need 1 John 4:8. Molly, you want to do that one? Jaron, you want to do Matthew 22:36-40, if you don't know it off the top of your head already? Grace, do you want to do 1 Corinthians 13:1-3, since you were already speaking out of it earlier? Go ahead and read it for us, Molly.
Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love.
Amen. Okay, so it's kind of a big deal that if you don't know love, you don't know God because God is love. And I need to make a clarifier really importantly right here. That does not say love is God. The sequence of those words matters. Because when you say God is love, what we're saying is that God's character, who he is, defines what love is. He is the reason it exists. He is the one that we are learning to follow and copy. When we say love is God, what we're saying is the principle, the concept is exalted. And what that ends up turning into is idol worship. I idealize what love is, and you're separating it from God himself. So we have to remember God is love. It's not love is God, right?
God is
Cultural thing. Because in the secular world, they tend to take these verses and they say exactly that. Well, God is love, isn't it? They're talking about their understanding and their definition in the secular world of it. And they're not actually, they're trying to separate love from source point. You can't do that. Okay. Matthew 22:36-40, Jaron.
Teacher, what is the great commandment in the law? And he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.
So what was the only action verb in the highest commands?
Love.
Yeah. They're the highest commands. And when he says all the law and prophets hang from that, he's referring to all the rules in the Old Testament. They broke down the books into different categories, and the first 5 books were called the books of the law. And then they had the books of the prophets. So they didn't have what they call the Old Testament. So he's saying all the law and prophets hang from these 2 sentences. They are the pinnacle point that everything branches off of. So it kind of seems like the only action verb in those commands is a pretty important word to know how to understand, right? It's God's character, it's who he is, and it's his rule and his laws. Now, what about 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 3?
If I could speak all the languages of the earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gifts of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would have nothing to gain, or I would have gained nothing.
So not only is God's character love, and we don't know him if we don't know him. Not only is that the law that he asks us to follow, the behavior he asks us to exhibit, it is also something that we cannot go for, because all of our works and our actions are pointless and useless without it. So it's kind of a big deal, right? Just a little bit, that if we have this word that is so incredibly important that we know what it means and that we agree about what it means, right? And we agree with God about what it means, right? And there's one other verse too. I want to challenge your thinking just a little bit. Okay, first of all, Romans 14, 17. This is the one that we say all the time. Do you know it? The kingdom of heaven is not eating and drinking, but so close. Righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit. Points for Jared, no. So I would like to argue that the word righteousness there could be substituted for the word love. Because if we're saying God's character and God's law is built off of love, righteousness is right behavior, right? So that love, peace, and joy, that righteousness, peace, and joy, it is kingdom character. Kingdom citizenship is built around this, right? So I believe you could substitute that if you wanted to. It would mean the same thing. But without, conflict can still exist inside of love, but peace is love without conflict. So love is the breeding ground that allows peace to exist, and joy just blossoms out of it, right? I don't think I've ever had a moment of joy that was separated from love. Real joy, pure joy, divine joy, right? So it's essential. It is pivotal. It is one of the most important parts of the human experience, right? To know the love of God. It's why we exist, because he wanted a family. He wanted relationship and intimacy with us. Love is why we're here. So I guess it's kind of a big deal to know what the word means, right? It matters, right?
Yeah.
There's some words that I'm not going to argue. Like, if you want to understand it differently, fine. But this one, we need to be on the same page. So I personally, in my lifetime, because of my fascination with the subject, have asked literally thousands of people. Literally thousands of people I have asked to define this word. And nobody could give me something operational. They say love is love. But you know that, like, when something really just bothers you and it's like hearing gears grinding in your brain? That's what happens to me every time I hear that phrase. Why? Because one of the first rules of defining a word is that you do not use the word to define the word. If I say a cat is a cat, and you've never seen a cat before, did I tell you anything? No, you might be real surprised about some claws coming out, right? But when we say love is love, it's used as the societal thing that says it is what it is, what it is. All that's saying is it means nothing. It means whatever I want it to mean. Okay? So that's what we're saying when we say love is love. I can't stand that grammatically because you never use the word to define the word, period. Okay? So they say God is love. And that's true. But to somebody who doesn't know God, does it actually communicate anything to them that is a shared understanding that gives them a launching point to understand how to walk and operate in love? Not really. If you don't know God, saying God is love is not going to communicate very well to you. even though it's a true statement. And they say love is too big to define. And honestly, then why do we use it? Why do I say I love my cat and I love my sister and I love my mom and I love my shoes and I love that song? And we use it to describe everything. Everything. Well, I guess if we're going to use it that big, we probably should know what it means, right? The truth is, we use love as a crutch. The world full of sin is crumbly, messy, right? We know love is the answer. Even if you've never read the Bible, there is this like innate thing in us that knows love is important, that values and cherishes it, that wants it deeply. All you need is love. Love is just a game. All right, anyway. Love is so important. We know how many songs are written about it, how many movies are made about it. But the truth is, it's a word that has no structural integrity because we haven't given it definition. So we're putting all our weight on it like a crutch because we have this broken leg called sin. We have this struggle called sin, and love is supposed to fix it. Love is supposed to be the answer. But without the structural integrity of a definition, that crutch snaps under the weight we put on it. So it's not real. It's not solid. I don't know about you, but I want it to mean something. When somebody says they love me, I want it to mean something. When I say I love somebody, I want them to know it means something. I don't want it to snap under the pressure. So first of all, value the importance of the word and don't throw it around quite so hard. There's a lot of beautiful words we can use to describe things that don't have to be the word love. But this means that it's super duper duper important for us to have something to go off of, right? Now, obviously, love is such a huge concept that the whole Bible is helping us understand how to define it. The whole Bible is helping us understand how to define it. A 4-letter word. That's kind of a big undertaking. I'm not suggesting that there is a definition that you can fit into one sentence that covers all of it. What I am saying is that there's a seed. There is a seed we can start with that gives us a starting point. Dictionary, we all know that I am not a huge fan. The dictionary says love is an intense feeling of deep affection or to like or enjoy something very much. Throw it in the trash. Throw it in the trash. No wonder the world's falling apart. If we're saying love is so important and we're reducing it to a fleeting feeling, what happens on the day that I don't feel it? What happens on the day where I don't feel deep affection for something? What happens on the day where I don't like you very much? Do I not love you anymore? No. It's the easiest analogy because the love for your child is so pure, right? So it's not anything that has ever happened, and I know it's never going to happen. But if my daughter, for example, were to, against my wishes, take my car, go to a party, get really drunk, and crash it into a tree on the way attempting to come home, I'm definitely not going to like that very much. I'm not going to have a lot of affection for those actions, but I still love her. I'm not going to stop loving her for making bad choices. I'm going to be very upset. I'm probably going to feel more anger and frustration and worry that she's okay than I feel love in the moment. So we can't reduce love to a feeling of affection or liking something very much. That's reductive and harmful. So love really is the most real when you act on it on the days you don't feel it. The love that lasts is the love that on the day where I'm bored and I have nothing to do, I don't suddenly decide that I don't love you anymore, right? And I can love you and not like you. Those days happen, right? So throw the dictionary definition into the garbage. It's not going to help anything. It's not going to help us whatsoever. Let's look to the Bible. He's smart, right? In the Bible, what arrows did God give us to define the word? Here's the seed, okay? Because I was so lost in life for a long, long time. I was desperate for love. I spent a lot of time in my childhood home seeking connection somewhere. You know, my parents were divorced. All my siblings were graduating high school when I was born. We were I was a surprise baby, right? And my dad lived in Georgia and my mom worked third shift. I just spent a lot of time on my own, not having people around to connect with and then feeling socially awkward at school, right? So This was a big deal to me. I knew it was something I needed and I needed to understand it. And I can tell you right now what the media taught me was wrong. Okay. What romantic comedies and all these movies out there taught me about love was super wrong. And it left me broken and hurt over and over and over again because I believed a wrong understanding of what love is and what it's supposed to be. Okay. So God planted a seed in me. When I came to the Lord, He gave me this revelation, and it has changed my entire life. Nothing has been the same since I figured this out. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little map. And this is just a starting point. Okay. So that we can have a one sentence starter as a definition. So first of all, 1 John 4:8, she read it. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. So the first piece of the puzzle is that God is love, right? We're all on the same page there? So the second one is Colossians 2:9. For in Christ lives all the fullness of God in a human body. Very straightforward. God is love, and God was in Jesus. We're still tracking? Yeah, right. So inside of Jesus is what love is. So now we get to point number 3. Jesus is walking, talking love. And in John chapter 1, we are given the revelation. In verse 14, it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw His glory. Glory as the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. And then a few verses later, in verse 17, it says, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. John's telling us there were 2 very pivotal things realized through Jesus, truth and grace. But I thought we said that God is love and God was inside of Jesus. So if you were making a spider graph off of the word love to try to come up with things that love is, your very first 2 branches would be truth and grace. And once I truly understood this, the whole Bible, I saw it through a different filter, you guys. It's a simple formula. If God is love and Jesus is God walking around in the flesh and He's truth and grace, well then that must be it, right? That must be the starting point for us. So first let's look at understanding this marriage of truth and grace, because it's not just 2 concepts separate. They're actually flawed by themselves. It's when they're together that they actually work well. So this is philosophical for a second, but let's look at what truth is when it's absent from grace. We're setting, not this grace, but we're setting grace aside. We're setting grace aside from the equation. We're looking at truth. What is truth? Aldous Huxley said facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. I feel like it's a very clear way to look at it. The truth is what it is, what it is. The dictionary says truth is the quality or state of being true. That told me something
Pretty
new,
lame.
right? Truth is about pinpoint accuracy. It's about honesty, facts, physical reality, what's real and in front of me. Science is observing things, trying to find out what's true, right? Information, letters, numbers, data, facts, figures. The opposite of truth, dishonesty, lies, manipulation. Only what's true can be real, right? So we have to have it. It's connected with law and order. It's a very left-brained side of concept, okay? People who are very legalistically minded tend to be, or like rigid. Yeah, people who are very logic-driven. It's not that they're necessarily wrong. It's just when you're separate from grace and you're looking at the truth and logic and it is what it is, what it is, you can kind of pick up the rock that is truth and throw it at people, right? You broke the rule, here's the consequence. End of story. I don't know why there's discussion, right? An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, though. It doesn't work. And you know what happens when you operate out of force and authoritarian style leadership? People rebel. It's too rigid. And it's not actually perfect because it removes all the joy out of life to just be. So truth is very rigid like a rock. But what does the Bible say? God is a rock, right? Because He's solid, unchanging, unwavering. Now let's look at grace without truth. Truth is over here, and we're not looking at it, just the concept of grace. The dictionary says simple elegance or refinement of movement, courteous goodwill. It's better than using the word to define the word. That's a step in the right direction. Most Christians define grace as unmerited favor. I didn't earn it. You just gave it. Because of grace, we are saved. We are saved by grace through faith, not of our works, which is very eccentric, so that nobody can boast. Right? So grace is often in the Christian world defined as unmerited favor. We didn't earn it. Generally speaking, grace is a reflection of free will. It's a reflection of choices, creativity, the spiritual side of life, the idealistic side, the merciful and kind side. Grace flows like water. And we need that too, right?
Yes.
And God offers us living water.
Amen.
So that's also not wrong. So in the Bible, God actually is reflected as both. And that's the first step, figuring out that we need both. Because what happens when grace is missing the truth? It becomes ungrounded in reality. Have you ever met that person who's like super crazy artistic and they're just so far out in left field, you wonder if they're here?
Yes.
Right? That's a very right-brained, grace-centric person who is highly creative, but maybe not leaning into the left brain so much. Interestingly enough, if you were being, like if somebody's angry with you and you're wanting to help calm them down, one of the tactics they use is ask somebody to recall a number. Like, what was that jersey number? What was that phone number? What year did that happen? Because that's more left-brained. And that emotional, creative, overcharged side is right-brain. So when you're asking them to recall, you're actually trying to pull them to the other side of their brain and help calm them down. So fun fact, right? Your left brain is your filing cabinet, your facts and figures. Your right brain is your creative side. Now, I want to use that picture for a second. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 7 through 12. Somebody want to look that one up for me real quick?
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them, and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he commanded him. And then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank and their livestock, which were lost. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them.
It wasn't because he used a stick to hit the rock. What picture was he trying to paint? God wanted him to draw the water out of the rock by speaking to them. He was trying to put this picture together. Teach them to lead through love and compassion. Even in a time where they didn't have Jesus to have this picture of understanding love, he was trying to give an image. And that's why Moses, as a leader, was not allowed to enter the promised land. Because he wasn't leading from love. He was striking the rock. He was leading from legalism and authoritarianism. It's not necessarily that he was wrong. I mean, it's not like Jesus never had a moment where he's like, do I have to keep dealing with you guys? Okay, that happens. But he led with love. Okay, so fun facts. I believe the rock was reflective of their hearts.
Yes.
The 10 Commandments were etched on a stone. And God talks about the 10 Commandments being etched on their hearts. And it also says in the Bible that the Israelites had hardened hearts. So I kind of pieced that all together and like their hearts were hard. That's why he etched the 10 Commandments on. It was supposed to be engraved on them because they didn't have that emotional processing understanding yet without the softness that the Holy Spirit gives them when you receive Jesus. That couldn't happen yet. So he was trying to speak to these survival-minded people and teach them something. So even then, even in the Old Testament, you can't say, well, God changed. No, he was always the same. He was just trying to reach them with something they could understand. So when you meet the truth with grace, you get compassion. Like seeing somebody sitting on the side of the road starving. Okay? You see that person, that you acknowledge the reality. The truth of it is that that person is hungry, and who knows what situation brought them there, right?
That's right.
But meeting it with grace is offering the compassion of the helping hand. Now, maybe the way you're helping them is a goodie bag or $5, or do you need a ride to the shelter or something like. But the point is, you're acknowledging the truth and meeting it with grace. That's compassion. That is love. Okay. And guess what? Where does that reside in your brain? The frontal lobe. When you start getting your left brain and your right brain to work together, that crossover happens in the frontal lobe. And when I first came to the Lord, that's also, I would get this like tingly sensation where I started to get angry in my forehead right here, because God was saying, you're not being compassionate. Watch yourself before you cross the line, right? So frontal lobe, when that right brain and left brain work together, that truth and grace blend, you get compassion. So it's literally even how he designed us. It's not just biblical, it's psychological. How cool is that, right? So now we have to add one clarifier to this, because in Romans 13, verse 10, it says, love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. So if I were to combine all of these things into one sentence that I would use as a seed starting point for defining the word love that we could all stand on and operate from, I would say love is a marriage of truth and grace that aims to do no harm. Marriage, because truth and grace have to start to blend together, okay? Truth without grace and grace without truth can be really harmful. We don't need chaos and we don't need legalism and rigidness. The word for grace without truth is antinomian, okay? This is what they refer to Jezebel as being. She was antinomian. She was very like, be free to do whatever, right? So that's kind of the culture the modern church has gotten into, this hyper grace culture of, well, God forgives me anyway, so who cares? That's chaos. There's a reason he gave us boundaries and structure. And just really quick, if love really does no harm to a neighbor and love is the fulfillment of the law, then if God is love and love does no harm, why does God allow evil to exist? I'm going to gloss over that. The reality is, think about this for a second. This computer is technology. You can put a computer into something that looks like a person and it's a robot, right? Will that robot ever love you?
No.
It will do what you program it to do. It may do things that look or sound very loving, but it is a puppet on the string. At the end of the day, it has no choice in the matter, right? So for real love to exist, and God is real love, and he wants real love relationships with us, not just puppets on a string that he forces. God doesn't force us. He says you choose, right? For real love to exist, choice has to exist. All of us have to be able to choose it. And if we can't, then we're just puppets on a string. I don't adhere to that. I don't believe that's what God wants or who he is. God does not want to play with Barbies for all of eternity. That's not his hope. He wants real relationship. So it has to be chosen. Love has to be chosen to be real. So why does evil exist? Because we all have choices.
Yes.
And we can choose to be just as evil as we can choose to be just as loving. People make bad choices and people make good choices. That's sin. Sin is when we make the bad choices outside of love, when we do the things that cause harm. And that includes to yourself. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself includes you. It is sin to be harmful to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it crosses over. Some of the things I do that are harmful to me are harmful to others and vice versa, right? And he's not judging us for it because it's so complex and so big. We weren't born with a perfect understanding. So we are slowly being conformed to the image of Christ as we learn to grow and walk with him. The other piece of that too is Romans 8:28, when he says he can turn all things for good for those who love him.
Yes.
So even though evil and bad things do happen, guess what? He can turn it around. He can use it. He can flip it. And I've watched it happen so many times, I believe it 100%. So the statement I start with, the seed is love is a marriage of truth and grace that aims to do no harm. And good Lord, I wish everyone, if I could speak to every person in the United States, every person in the world, and get them to share that understanding, that seed what would change in this for people to understand something as simple as when Paul said speak truth in love, he didn't say truth and love. A lot of times when people quote it, they say truth and love. But that little word changes your understanding. When you say truth and love, you're saying truth is separate from love. When you speak truth in love, you're saying it's part of being loving. Paul told us to speak truth in love. And I think the hyper grace culture of the modern church has just confused grace with being that all that love is, right? They see the grace side of it, the creative side, the forgiving side, and they're just like, well, I don't need to be grounded in truth, right? So I think people have just tried to make love and grace be the same thing, but grace is a piece of love, it's not the whole picture. So love is a marriage of truth and grace that aims to do no harm. When truth and grace truly blend, I always think of it like a couple. I picture a couple. So like you have this military drill sergeant over here and you have a ballerina over here, right? And they're complete polar opposites. But the drill sergeant looks over there and says, oh, there's something to that. Like, look how beautiful it is. Look how it flows. Look how elegantly it pieces together. And the ballerina looks over there and says, well, structure is nice. I could use some of that. And they start to like fall in love with each other, right? And they come closer and closer and closer. And grace softens truth to a place that gives us second chances, forgiveness. It looks at the reality of things and says, this can change. I am not this person forever. I am not my one bad decision I made 10 years ago. I'm not the bad decision I made yesterday. I can change because grace allows it. And does not just beat me over the head with a stick because I made a bad choice, right? I'm not pigeonholed because of grace. But truth grounds us. And we need it because in this grace, what happens when things become chaotic? It becomes fear-filled. I think of like the purge. When people can do anything they want, whatever they want, and it's like, well, who cares? That's what would happen if we had no grounding in truth, if we had no stop signs, if we had no, laws and rules and regulations. We might not like the consequences. We may not love being held accountable, but without it, it's unsafe. Okay? So there's a few nuances to walking out love the way God defines it that I want to touch on. Because like I said, these are just the first two branches of a spider graph, truth and grace. They could go on forever. Could go on forever and ever and ever. If you wanted the detailed answer, you couldn't write a book long enough. Okay? So nuances. First nuance is love has boundaries. The 10 Commandments and the Sermon on the Mount are a great outline. So the 10 Commandments is like your black and white outline of a heart. The Sermon on the Mount is like filling it in with color. And then all the stories and life experiences that polish and refine it are what make it three-dimensional. Okay? Real, active, walking, talking, living love. We're supposed to be not just walking in and doing, but being. Okay? So love does have some boundaries. They're not mean boundaries, they're safe boundaries. Yes. And if you value your safety and the safety of others, those boundaries need to be in place. Right? The second nuance that I want to look at is defining love through the lens of function. Men and women tend to express love differently. Okay, I'm not going to dig deeply into this, but men are designed to be protectors and providers. So a lot of times their ultimate expression of love is to die for you. I will take the bullet. I will burn myself out and work hard. I will not put this burden on your back. I'm going to carry it myself. That's men expressing love, carrying it for you. Women are born to be nurturers. So women will live for you. Okay, they will do all the micro details and hospitalities and the minutia of day to day, and they will show up and do those things to fill your life and fill your space with things. Men and women express love differently and also receive love differently. So when we're talking about defining love the way God does, that's part of his picture, right? The way we love each other. Another piece of it is that we define love through our roles in the body, okay? Everybody has a different role they were given in the body of Christ. And so what you are called to may cause you to lean into a certain area of expressing love. If you're an evangelist, And God has made you to be that. Love for you may be finding the lost and saving the lost. Where for me, being more apostolic teacher driven, love for me is sharing this, loving people enough to help them see the way God teaches it and wanting everybody to walk in this culture, right? Well, somebody else who is a pastor, love might be showing up to each of your individual functions and coming to the hospital and praying over you. And so your role in the body, your function in the body will impact the way that you express love. It doesn't make it the only form. It's just a part of the love picture. Just like when you put white light through a prism and it breaks into a rainbow of different colors, it all came from the white light. It's just a refracted piece, right? So you are the different color in the rainbow. And the third nuance that I want to cover is defining love through the lens of relationship dynamic between us, right? So we talked about that spouse level. We talked about our role in the body. But there's also, in the original Greek of the New Testament, when it was translated to English, there, depending on who you talk to, 4 to 8 different Greek words that were translated to the word love. Their culture separated out and had different words for agapos, love, that is for everybody, unconditional and sacrificial. Pragma was practical and based on duty or obligation. They had a word for friend, was philia, affectionate or strong friendship, similar to being like a brother from another mother, right? They had a word for family love, shorga. I don't know if I say that right, but love that family members have for one another. And they also had a different word for romantic love, which was eros. And that's physical love or desire that you would typically have reserved for a spouse. They gave each of them different words because they knew that love was complex. Are all of them forms of love? Yes. Do all of them come from God who is love? Yes. That just means that we have the responsibility as English speakers, first of all, to do a little bit of study so that you know which version of love you're talking about when you're reading scripture and not confusing them, but also for us to be more clear in understanding those levels and boundaries. Levels of intimacy are often formed by shared knowledge. So there's a difference between what a stranger knows about me versus what a friend knows about me versus what a family member knows about me versus what a spouse knows about me. And they're all forms of love. But we have to take on the responsibility of setting those categories if we're going to continue using the word love to cover everything. Because God is love as one focal point. It's not wrong. It just requires a higher level of emotional intelligence. So we have to walk that out carefully, right? So there's a lot of angles from which you might express or receive love. People have their love languages and all that kind of stuff, right? You can take the test and find out what your love language is. Mine's acts of service, if you want to know. But also quality time was very, very close second, right? I just want connections with people, right? And I've been talking with Justin about that a lot too, because this church is different because we get to connect so closely. We get to have this smaller knit, intimate relationship with God and with each other. Like, it's family. It's not just show up and sit and listen to me talk, okay? We sit here and support each other. We stand up and support each other. We go out and do the thing, right? And we want to maintain and nurture that because that's what's become so unhealthy in the modern church. We've lost the intimacy of relationship that they had in the early church. They didn't know if they would be killed for speaking or doing whatever they did. They bonded together in community. They would sell all their belongings to make sure that everybody had what they needed. They'd eat together and pray together and live together and do life together. We can't lose that. The church was never meant to just be a Sunday thing. The church is meant to be life. I don't go home and disassemble the pieces of my body. So why do we do that to Jesus? We're the body all week. We're love all the time. And if we don't carry that with us, then things get messy, right? So now that I've given this context, marriage of truth and grace that aims to do no harm, that they blend together to complement each other and become this new, better thing, like when a married couple has a baby, and that's love, right? So now let's look at 1 Corinthians 13. They read it at every wedding, right? Well, almost every wedding. And she read chapter 13, verse 1 through 3 for us already. I'm going to start at verse 4 because this is the list. And while I'm reading this list, I really want you to grab onto how each of these pieces that describe love reflect truth and grace, reflect these components. Love is not just a list of traits. It's an exemplified behavior. It's who we are. It's supposed to become our character and our nature. So listen to this list of things. Love is patient. That's definitely acknowledging the truth and meeting it with grace. Lots of grace. Patience runs thin someday, but love is the solution, right? Love is kind. It's not jealous. Love doesn't brag. It's not arrogant. It doesn't act disgracefully. It doesn't seek its own benefit. It's not provoked. Love doesn't keep an account of a wrong suffered. It doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. It keeps every confidence. It believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. You literally hear me just say it rejoices with the truth. Rejoicing is the grace, meaning the truth. It's right there on the page. You see how to form the connection, right? Love never fails. Praise God. Love never fails. But if there are gifts of prophecy, they will be done away with. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there is knowledge, it will be done away with. For we know in part and prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away with. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, think like a child, reason like a child. When I became a man, or in my case, a woman, I did away with childish things. For now, we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I also have been fully known. But now faith, hope, and love remain, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Do you know why love is the greatest of those three? Faith and hope are temporary. On this earth, we need faith and hope to make it. Without faith and without hope, I cannot survive this life. Please never surrender your hope to anyone. Nobody is allowed to take that from you. Nobody. The most horrible state of being is to feel hopeless. Do not surrender it, okay? But when our time comes, when our appointed time comes, and God says it's time to come home, we won't need faith and hope anymore. He will be right there, face to face. No more partial. We get the fullness of the love of God. And the picture that we get in Revelation is that love will be so overwhelming, we won't be able to help ourselves but to worship. There's nowhere that it says, and he demanded that they bow down and worship. It says they cast their crowns of their own free will, and we're like, holy are you, God. I get it now. And honestly, we probably needed this life experience to value and appreciate what God gives us and who he is. Because without the experience of suffering, how do I truly, fully value and appreciate what is good? The more I have suffered in life, the more deeply, intimately I have appreciated God for the love and perfection that he did. The more it moves me to tears to think of how beautiful and amazing it is. How it doesn't change. Everything around me changes. Everything around me is temporary. And God is just right there being perfectly, unchangingly good forever. So awesome. He is love. He's the source point of love. He's the beacon we're trying to just draw closer and closer and closer to. I find myself lately praying at night, saying, Lord, I just need you closer. And no matter how much closer he gets, I'm like, closer still. There is no level of intimacy too deep. I need God as close as humanly possible to me at all times. This is the only way I make it through this world. So love is a pretty big deal in the Bible. And the world has watered it down and tried to break it. You want to destroy a culture. You want to destroy a religion. You want to destroy something. Start with the language. Look around you and look at all the words that people are trying to redefine or change or shift, and you will see people trying to dismantle not just culture, but faith. It's the attack point. So we have to know what this word means, what it is, walk it out, demonstrate it, and set the culture no matter what they say or do. What is love really? Yes, it is beyond our comprehension how big it is. But it starts with what we do right here. I always tell people the best thing you can do is just love the person in front of you like God would love them, the best of your ability. Obviously, we can't do that perfectly, but God put that person right in front of you. I'm not worried about what happened yesterday or 10 years ago. I'm not worried about 50 years from now. I'm not even thinking too hard about tomorrow. In the present moment, I'm giving 100% of myself to love the way God does, to the best of my ability. And the more you do that, the more He will put in front of you to do. This church keeps growing. It will continue to grow because we love each other and not because we're so worried about numbers. Because what we do in the presence of God, in the intimacy of relationship here, will be a moth to a flame for people. The presence of God dwells among us, and we are joined together with it, and in it, and around it. That is the love of God. And people will see it and know it and want to be a part of it. I could care less about tactics that grow a church. That's the only one that matters to me. Sincere faith, real relationship, and walking it out in love. But how do we love each other if we don't? Now we do, right? We can see really clearly where God was giving us a roadmap. And sometimes it just takes a piece of revelation to piece it together, right? But now it changes the way I navigate conflict. One of the very first questions I have if somebody comes to me to mediate a conflict is, was the truth spoken, was grace applied? 99% of the time, your unresolved conflict is because one of those things was ignored. It hasn't been fully met with love yet. It's only been partially. A lot of Christians will say, well, I forgave them in my heart. Isn't that what matters? But did the situation actually get confronted and resolved? Then it's not done yet. Sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes you can't. But to the best of ability, safely, right? We have to confront the issues, especially if it's a relationship you're continuing in. If it's a coworker or a friendship or a partner, and you just ignore every problem and say, well, I forgave them in my heart. What are they going to do? What you allow is what will continue. If you never speak, that hurt me, I didn't like that, and set a boundary, then the person will continue to hurt you, and you'll continue over and over say, well, I forgave them in my heart, but why do I feel suffocated like I'm backed into the corner of a room? Because you are. You're doing it to yourself by not speaking and setting your own boundary space, right? So love does have boundaries, and it does have grace. It has truth, and it has grace. We need both, and we need to watch them fall in love with each other and marry together to the point where truth is grace and grace is truth. I'm applying grace to you by being honest. You are giving me grace by speaking truth, right? It can't just be one or the other. You're going to walk into other church cultures and environments now, and you're going to see hyper grace culture, and you're going to see legalism. And you know what? The very first thing is going to be to do, you get to bring the other piece. You get to help balance through and say, maybe in a room where you see a lot of very legalist personalities, they're coming in with grace and saying, I'm going to be soft with you. I'm going to be sweet. I'm going to be forgiving. I'm going to be kind to you, even though you were cool to me. And maybe you're going to go into a church that is very overly grace-driven and has no grounding in reality. And you're going to speak truth and address conflict that is being ignored in a very truth and love kind of way, right? You're going to understand how to balance culture better in your home, in your workplace, in your friendships, everywhere, if you understand that marriage of truth and grace that aims to do no harm. Why do I say aims? Sometimes I have the best intentions and poor execution. Okay. I have a story And somebody told me that stuck with me. And he's like, one day I just felt really like I was supposed to do a random act of kindness. And so the person in front of me, I bought their coffee. And the person turned around and yelled at me and said, I don't need you to pay for me. I can take care of myself. So he doubled down. He's like, I just felt inclined to be kind and do something nice for someone. And the man got even angrier. Good intentions, but the execution caused harm and conflict, right? So love aims to do no harm, but conflict can still exist inside of it. It's okay. It doesn't diminish love in any way. It just means that we have things to be accountable for, to learn and navigate through. And ultimately, if the goal is for it to grow into peace and we lead with love, we'll get there. You embrace that joy. I really hope that you'll take some time this week as you're going through your day to come back to this thought, truth and grace, and look at the situations around you. Look at what unfolds around you and ask yourself, are both pieces there? Is this operating in love? Is this causing harm or not? And just, it's going to like totally flip your mind around. Like I said, it's a seed. It's up to you what soil it lands on. But man, it grew into a mighty tree in my life.